I have no confidence that this Labour administration can deliver this budget. The last 3 months has shown an administration in chaos, flip-flopping backwards and forwards, school playing fields, the tenant tax, Pearly Pool, up and down posters. So I can't support this budget. It's a weak flip-flopping administration which has shown itself incapable of taking or implementing tough decisions. And its failure to produce a budget for the long term will come back to haunt it.
Can you wind up, please?
There's a lot of growth protecting looked after children in the budget. I welcome that, but I wonder how sustainable it is, because the attempt to claw back funding, for example, the Looked After Children's Review, looks to me, given the pressures that I know are on this area, not very realistic. So, along with that, and coupled with the fact that, as we know, this Labour Council cannot manage money, I do have concerns for the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All in all, the budget appears light on detail, and I worry that this Labour Council is just hoping that everything will somehow work out all right. Should we all be crossing our fingers, or will all become clear after the 7th of May? It just doesn't seem a very open and transparent way of managing the council finances. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, to put council tax up whilst you have one department overspent by £6 million in 1 year is a choice, though one brought about by the incompetence of Councillor Woodley. This council is making choices and trying to hide their responsibility behind the national picture. The result of these choices are stark, and they are revealed in the answer to CQ 135 in the Blue Papers today. Over 4 years of this administration, Labour are budgeting to raise council borrowing to income from 108% in 2014 to 172% in 2018, whilst admitting that income will not fall. Gordon Brown would be proud of the way you run this council's finances. Madam Mayor, choices are being made, but the next time that the Croydon residents get the opportunity to make a choice can't come soon enough. I oppose this budget.
We achieved budget balance for years until 2014. Under you, overspend shot up to £3.5 million in 2015 and £6.9 million this year. Where will it end? Labour are happy to spend millions on pet projects, but they add up to 2% on the council tax. So you could have kept your election promise not to raise council tax. However, you chose to extract more from taxpayers. Councillor Woodley, your overspending is spiralling out of control. You've not got a firm grip on financial management and have no action plans in place. I really fear for those people in Croydon in the future who need help and support.
Here we see Labour in its true colours. The highest council tax increase in London this year, the highest council tax ever paid in Croydon, the biggest mountain of debt ever seen in Croydon, the worst departmental overspend ever seen in Croydon. This is a truly frightening budget. This Labour administration has completely lost control of the budget, not least in the People Department, where we've seen an overspend this year of a staggering £11 million.
A budget spiralling out of control, leading to huge and unnecessary tax rises hitting the most vulnerable in our borough. It is the abject failure of Councillor Woodley that is most shocking. Labour set the budget for her department, but Councillor Woodley has totally ignored it, overspending by a shocking £11 million. Had she done a good job, then this huge council tax rise would not have been necessary. It is a huge dereliction of her public duty.
The strategy here in Croydon, though, is all too clear. Increase the debt, increase how much it costs each year, and increase council tax to pay for it. The situation, as has been mentioned before, is spiralling out of control. The majority of London councils are not putting council tax up by the maximum 4.99%, but Croydon is. Why? It's to cover their own failings. If they hadn't overspent by over £10 million so far this year in the People Department, they would not need to put council tax up at all. But they don't mention that. They talk about government. The truth of this is that, as always, Labour have failed financially and are going to make residents pay for them. Budgets are out of control and getting worse. The People Department was overspent in Q1, worse in Q2, and now Q3 comes out and it's worse again. Mr Mayor, a council tax rise of 4.99% by this Labour administration is not justified. Most other London councils have kept it lower, and we cannot support making the residents of Croydon pay for Labour's incompetence, and we will vote against this budget.
Because the truth is, you lost control of this town's finances years ago. You haven't yet set a budget for the People Department that you've been able to stick to. Every February you set a budget. Every year by September you're admitting you can't stick to it. If you'd been able to stick to your own budgets, you wouldn't have had to put up council tax in this town at all, because you've overspent by a total of £33 million in 4 years in just one department.
After 4 of the worst years on record for Cabinet members failing to achieve their budgets, and year after year the weak Labour leadership simply allowing the same thing to happen again, we are left with little choice. We've heard the usual abdication of responsibility from Labour tonight, but be in no doubt that their denials have consequences. By claiming that everything is the government's fault, they diminish the opportunity for change. After all, if there's nothing you could have done about it, then it's not down to you to find the solution. But be in no doubt, a solution is desperately needed, and it is not going to come from Labour. An administration that can oversee £33 million of overspend in 4 years in one department and then claim that the Cabinet member is doing a great job is not looking to improve. It is the residents of Croydon who are being made to pay by this council, and this budget makes it worse. If you can't keep to a budget that you set yourself, if you end up overspending in your departments by millions of pounds every year against your own forecasts, then you are going to look for someone else to bail you out. As Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. Well, Croydon Labour clearly feel that the residents of Croydon have plenty left to give. Millions of pounds of extra income being taken from the pockets of local people in parking charges and fines. Millions more pounds being taken from the pockets of local people in new care charges. Millions of pounds extra in council tax being taken from their pockets yet again this year. Yet more millions in project overruns, where costs go millions of pounds over and completion dates go back years. Every extra millions of pounds having to be ploughed into children's services to rescue them from the Ofsted failure overseen by this Labour council. And millions of pounds of extra interest being paid on council debt that Labour are now prepared to push to an eye-watering £1.6 billion, saddling not just the current Croydon residents, but their children as well, with Labour's debt mountain. And even with this, even with all of this, Labour are still overspending. And yes, it's by millions. Labour cannot be trusted to deliver these figures. They failed last year, they're failing this year. And here's a prediction for you. They'll fail you next year too.
Compared to other London boroughs, with similar demographic challenges, with similar budgetary pressures, and even with the same political party in power, it's clear that Croydon is just badly run. The Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government published, at the end of last year, all the borrowing and investment stats for 2019. Of all 32 London boroughs, Croydon has the worst short-term borrowing, the worst long-term borrowing, and the worst total borrowing. It's no wonder that the auditors condemned your financial management. Debt upon debt, spending out of control, and no proper plans to fix it. So how does Croydon Labour try to plug the deficit? Well, they raise taxes, of course. They raise taxes on parents already battling with the cost of living. They raise taxes on young people trying to make their way in the world, on those renting, struggling to save a deposit. They raise taxes on elderly and vulnerable residents worrying about their bills, taxes up for small, vital local businesses, the true engines of our economy, trying to offer work for our residents. Croydon wouldn't mind if it was to guarantee better services, but instead it's to service Labour's financial incompetence.
And that's a real characteristic of this administration, a complete refusal to take responsibility for these things. It's always somebody else's fault. And there's clearly a lot going wrong with the financial management of this council. Every year for the last 5 years, when the budget is set, we've been assured we have a robust and accurate budget, and yet every year by the end of the first quarter we see departmental overspends of £6 to £10 million, and that's after 1 quarter, 3 months. Every budget we ask, if you couldn't get it right this year, why should we believe you next year? And every year we're assured it's okay, but every year it's the same, massive overspend quarter 1. And this year we're told it's okay now, the budget's right this year, we won't overspend this year, probably. But given your track record of the last 5 years, you will forgive us if we don't go and get the bunting out just yet.
Reality, though, is that this council is facing a very dangerous couple of years coming up. The overall reserves are frighteningly low, debt is at its highest ever level, and this administration's record of achieving its budgets is woeful. They are walking this borough over a tightrope after burning its safety net. A number of Labour speakers this evening have kept referring to a balanced budget. Yes, it's balanced now, before it happens. But the last couple of years have demonstrated how your budgets look at the end of the year, and that is normally overspent. Councillor Newman and his cabal have achieved some notable firsts, though. In Croydon today, the residents are being asked to pay the highest ever council tax, for the worst ever adherence to budget, carrying the highest ever debt, run by a cabinet who have awarded themselves the highest ever allowances, all decided by this Labour-run administration.